Slater Crusaders, America's the greatest country in the world. Thanks for being here. Let's start off with our, seems like daily, Don't Trust the Experts segment. First, we'll start with the meme of the day. My parents at 29, the wife says, let's have a baby. Me at 29, I hope the government will let me go to Chili's today. CNN had a story the other day. I think we got a picture of it. Do we have a picture of this story? I thought this family was two moms. But then I watched it, and that's the dad at the end of the table. It's hard to tell these days, but you got two kids. The girl's 12, the boy's, 8? And they're playing a board game. They're wearing masks in their home. And they're all vaccinated. The 12-year-old girl's vaccinated. They're all vaccinated except for the little brother because he's too young. And they're all terrified of infecting this kid. And he's terrified of dying. And I thought, oh, well, maybe he has cancer or something. Maybe some chemo patient. No, he's a healthy 8-year-old boy. At least physically healthy. His parents are abusing him. That is abuse. That is child abuse, just in a socially acceptable way. Imagine the depravity of government officials who are like, whatever you do, don't kiss your children. Don't kiss them. Don't be near them. Don't breathe on them. The Aussie health officials, do we still have this picture, guys, of the caption where it says, keep distance away from your kids? Parents need to keep distance from their children. That's what the news stickers. Parents need to keep distance from their children. There was another Australian health official who said, hey, listen, when you go to the grocery store, you have this natural human urge to be friendly. Don't be. When you see your neighbor or your best friend in the grocery store, don't talk to him. Fight back that urge to be friendly. New York City has a whole subway campaign telling you not to talk to anyone. Put your head, there it is. There's good, better, best. And the best is, so the good is you're wearing masks, but you're looking at each other, you're talking to each other. The best is masks in your phone. Because I feel like, especially with kids, we had this whole, limit screen time thing. And we've had this whole movement like, geez, maybe we shouldn't be in our phones all the time, non-stop. And here's the New York City subway ads being like, hey, best thing to do, just keep it here. Don't talk to anybody, don't look at anybody, don't breathe in anybody's general direction. This is not healthy. Now we're masking in our homes, masking around your kids. Here's what I get from this. Here's the story. It will never end. It will never end. They'll never end it, I should say. You can, they won't. This is the important scientific fact of the day. We have one scientific fact of the day. This is the one. Study out of England. 80%, 79 point, what does that say? 79.8 or whatever to be specific. But 80% of 16 to 24-year-olds have antibodies. This is the percentage of people of different age groups who have antibodies. That is either from vaccine or from having had COVID. And that's all that matters. The vaccine just helps you make antibodies. So if you have antibodies naturally, you have the vaccine, whatever. So this is from July 18th. So we're, almost a month later. And even 16 to 17-year-olds, these are 16 to 17-year-olds in England, they don't have the vaccine for anyone under 18. So these are unvaccinated 16, 17-year-olds. Still 60% of them have immunity naturally, 60%. And as you saw from that chart, every other age group is 95% or above. This is herd immunity. Notice how that's gone. You never hear anyone talk about herd immunity anymore. It's like it doesn't even exist. Of course it does. We got herd immunity. This is it. This is the end of it. And if they haven't ended it, then there is no end. It will never stop. Herd immunity is the number of people who need to have antibodies for a virus to stop spreading. And if you remember, for the last year and a half, we didn't know. No one knew. So scientists would say, remember we had Vincent Racaniello, professor from virology, was on every week. And he'd be like, we just don't know the herd immunity. It could be 60%, could be as high as 80% before you get herd immunity, somewhere in between. We just don't know. No one for the last year and a half said, herd immunity, it's 96%. No, it was like 80% max is herd immunity. And we're at, as they saw from that England study, we're at 95%. Like we're way past the upper bounds of what anyone thought it would ever need to be. So enough already. This is a professor at UC San Francisco School of Medicine. He says, when the history books are written about the use of non-pharmaceutical measures or pharmacological measures, that's like masking, during this pandemic, we will look as prehistoric and barbaric and tribal as our ancestors during the plagues of the Middle Ages. What the books won't capture is how, in this moment, our experts were simply so sure of themselves. Do you know what he's referring to? The plague doctors of the medieval times? Have you ever seen the masks that the plague doctors wore back in the day, 1400s, 1600s? That's what they wore. They wore these masks with this long beak on the end. Why? To scare the bejeebus out of whoever they were treating. Back then they didn't have germ theory. So they thought that the plague spread through poisoned air. They thought it was there, look at that thing. Whoo! Jeez, that's freaky. Actually, that's the mask that Gonzo would wear, and Gonzo is going to be the feature of our next segment, actually. Just random. Anyway, they thought the plague spread through poisoned air, so they would fill these beaks with perfumes and herbs and honey and other nice-smelling things to try and disinfect the air. They would put 55 different herbs in their mask, and they'd put it in this long beak, and then they had the nostrils at the end of the beak, and they thought that this would give enough, the air would come in the end and it would like flow through the smelly things, and that would give the air enough time to disinfect and be healthy. And they looked ridiculous. And so do we. We haven't evolved a lick. We haven't evolved a lick from the Middle Ages. Oh, now science has improved. Oh, no doubt, science has improved. Science has gotten better. People haven't. People haven't. Sometime this week, I'm going to do my full presentation on why masks don't work. I'm going to go over every study and every fact in an easy-to-digest segment. We're going to do that sometime this week. But we might as well just hang garlic around our necks to keep COVID. That works as much as your cloth mask. We're no smarter than the plague doctors from 400 years ago. We look just as silly. But trust the experts, right? Always, 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 always trust the experts. I read, someone wrote the other day, they smugly said that you may not understand how the vaccine works, the mRNA vaccine. You may not understand, but scientists do. So if you're really curious, you should read up on it yourself. And someone wrote back, okay. Right, I'll go ahead and parse through the mRNA vaccine literature during my free time. No one's going to do that. No one could do that. So what do? Well, we rely on authorities. But they spent the last year and a half canceling weddings and funerals and our jobs and telling us that George Floyd riots are a public health necessity. So excuse us if we're having a little trouble trusting these same people. You can't trust the experts. They've violated our trust. And I love this point from this gentleman on Twitter. He said, tribalism always emerges when institutional trust erodes. People might not be certain which side is telling them the truth, but they can certainly tell which side is actively wishing them harm. Societies will be governed either by tribes or institutions. The institutions take generations to build and no time at all to burn down. These people destroyed the credibility of institutions with which they've been entrusted, and now they threaten us with force if we balk at their demands. It's a brilliant point. Luigi Warren, have you ever heard the name Luigi Warren? Maybe the first time you ever heard his name, Luigi Warren. You would remember that name if you've ever heard the name Luigi. When's the last time you heard the name Luigi, right? So you would remember that name if you heard it. He's one of the inventors of mRNA vaccines, right? He's like one of the pioneers of the technology of mRNA vaccines. He worked with the founder of Moderna. There he is. He worked with the founder of Moderna back in the day. Well, he's been kicked off Twitter. He's said stuff about vaccines that the media doesn't like. He's not following the script. So he's been put in Twitter jail. He's been canceled, silenced. No one ever asks his opinion about anything because he's not following the perfect, precise party line. That's the guy who invented mRNA vaccines. You'd think he'd be a person worth listening to or worth asking a question, right? But no, it's not him. It's all Fauci all the time. But trust the experts. Just not all the experts. Not the experts that the experts say you shouldn't trust. Just them. Just trust the people who they say you should trust, which is them. Just them, only and always. All right, I'll end here. Scott Lilienfeld is a psych professor at Emory. He wrote an article on psychopaths, and he was doing a cross-cultural analysis of how different cultures treat psychopaths in their culture. And he told the story of 1976, there was a Harvard anthropologist who studied this remote, isolated Inuit tribe in Alaska. All right? And they had a term for a psychopath. They didn't have the word psychopath, right? But it was a man who repeatedly lies, cheats, steals, abuses women, and never changes. Like repeatedly is told over and over, reprimanded by the elders, right? And told this, you're not doing it right. You're not. What do you do? So the article says when this anthropologist was asked, when the anthropologist asked an Inuit what the group would typically do to Kunlangeta, a psychopath, the person replied, well, somebody would have pushed him off the ice when nobody else was looking. Now, excuse me for chuckling there. I was not chuckling at that horrific suggestion. I would never suggest that we do such a thing to our wise leaders today. My point is, in small hunter-gathering societies like that Inuit tribe, the psychopath is controlled internally, kept in check, and then perhaps ultimately pushed off the ice when no one's looking. In large modern societies like ours, the psychopath rises to power. And we're being ruled by them today. Coming up next, I want to talk about like the latest example, this week's example of our insanely depraved culture, especially these psychopaths who are preying on your children and feeding them absolute poison that you would not believe. Like maybe now you would because like we're a little like it's a little bit more every day, right? 2 years ago, if this would be outrageous that they would do something like this, and I don't know, maybe people are used to it, I guess. Hey, download our app. It's totally free, super easy to use. This is what I love about it. There's a lot of apps where they say it's free, but there's like in-app purchases and all these other things where they try to get you. No. Totally free. Click the button, scroll, all the shows are there. You see all the hosts, all the shows are there. They're all, boom, click it, boom, it plays. That's it. Piece of cake. And when you close your phone, you can put your headphones in and it still plays in the background. It's a wonderful, easy to use app and everything's right there. Or you can keep listening to the lame stream if you want. I'm grateful you're here and you can listen to us on your app as well. All right, coming up next, we'll talk about Gonzo. By the way. Hey, Slater Crusaders, my pen just broke. The most radical, hippie, crunchy thing I believe in, I guess, is that kids should never watch television. And I'll say this, certainly kids under 5. Like in no circumstance should a child under 5 years old ever watch a television. Ever. They shouldn't even know it's a thing. And I'll say this, and people are, everyone gets all outraged about it. Like, no, knock it off. And you certainly should not mindlessly put your kids in front of the television at a young age. What are you doing? We live in a depraved culture. Be careful what you do with that. Be careful. You're just putting your kids out there just to the lions. All right, here's the deal. This is the latest. We'll do another one of these next week, I'm sure. This is Muppet Babies. The show Muppet Babies on Disney Junior. It's Disney Junior. It's like target marketed towards like 2-year-olds. I don't know what. Who would do this? Why would you put your kid in front of Disney Junior ever? books. My dad's favorite Seinfeld line is the Bizarro episode, and Elaine is telling Jerry that the other Bizarro Jerry reads. And Jerry goes, I read. And she goes, books, Jerry. They read books. And Jerry goes, oh, okay. Books. Your kids need to read books. They don't need to be watching Muppet Babies, ever. All right? Anyway, here's the latest episode of Muppet Babies.
Wow. Get a load of that dress. I'd love to wear a dress like that to your royal ball.
But Gonzo, Piggy and I are the princesses. We wear the dresses.
That's right. According to the royal handbook, the girls come as princesses and the boys come as knights.
Oh, right.
Aw, don't worry, Gonzo. We're gonna have a great time being knights.
Fabulous! Summer and I are off to pick out our dresses.
We better get ready too. Forward, fellow knights!
Huzzah! Huzzah.
All right, I have to. I don't know how to fit this in organically. Director Eric just said, to be fair, he does have a penis for a nose. But I can't share that. I'm not going to share that. We're just going to move on to the next clip here. Here we go.
Hey, Gonzo, you okay? Not exactly. I really wish I could wear one of those princess dresses to the ball. Well, I hate to see a good pal feeling bad. So tell you what, I am gonna grant your wish, because I am your fairy rat father! Bleepin' Leatherworth! I didn't know you were a fairy rat father. Well, you never asked. Anyway, I'm gonna make sure you have the perfect dress to wear to the ball. But the girl said I'm not supposed to wear a dress. I don't want everyone to be upset with me. Well, if it makes you feel better, I can make your outfit so amazing, they won't even know it's you. You mean it? All right then, let's do it. You got it. Bippity boppity boo-ba! Have you ever seen such a splendorific dress? And get a load of my glass sneakers. Thank you, Fairy Rat Father. This makes me so happy.
Okay, with me so far. And I know someone's, oh, Slater, lighten up. Oh, you always get that one, right? It's just Gonzo. There's no genders in Muppet Land. The whole point is, this is what girls do, this is what boys do. That's the whole point, right? He's like, oh, the girls say I'm not supposed to wear a dress. Anyway, so Gonzo goes to the ball in a dress. Because whatever. So then the other Muppet Babies, they get to the castle, and Miss Piggy's the princess, and Fozzie Bear comes up and says, hey, great party, and gives Miss Piggy a high five. And Miss Piggy says, no, Fozzie, that's not the proper way to greet a princess. At the ball, boys bow, girls curtsy. Right, so more traditional gender norms, very bad, must be destroyed. Here's what happens next.
Wow!
To begin the evening, we shall...
Hello, everyone.
Ooh, look, it's a mysterious new princess.
I love mysteries.
Whew.
I'm Princess Summer. What's your name?
You can call me Gonzarella.
Hi, Gonzarella.
Gonzarella.
Well, we're happy to have you, Gonzarella. And your dress is simply fabulous. Let's all greet each other with a princess curtsy.
Sure. Curtsy.
Amazing. I've never seen a curtsy quite like that before.
It was very different.
Heroic. This whole episode. Gonzo does neither the boy bow nor the girl's curtsy. He doesn't fit into traditional gender norms. All right, so last clip, they're trying to find the owner of the slipper or whatever, and it can't be Gonzo, because he's a boy. And then he reveals it was him. And boys can wear dresses too, and it's all so brave and wonderful.
There you are. You missed our royal ball.
We met the most amazing princess. But they ran away, and all they left behind was this.
Everyone, there's something I need to tell you. The princess who came to your ball tonight was me. I'm Gonzarella.
But Gonzo, why didn't Vu tell us?
Because you all expected me to look a certain way. I don't want you to be upset with me, but I don't want to do things just because that's the way they've always been done either. I want to be me.
All right, a couple things. You notice Miss Piggy said the princess ran away from the ball and we don't know where they are, or something like that. They use the proper pronoun, they, as opposed to she. Right? Your kids are being poisoned. That's straight propaganda. And you know that every school, every public school is going to eventually show that in their class. They're going to show that whole episode. Because it's well made and it's Disney Junior and parents aren't going to pay attention because it's Disney and we trust Disney. We trust the experts, right? So every kindergarten class, first grade, second grade is going to be watching that. Unless, and I'll get to this point in a minute, unless you actively resist it and don't send your kid to a public school, quite frankly. It was always bad enough that we would allow our kids to be entertained with nonsense. That's bad enough. I used to do segments on that. Like, why would you put your kid in front of a television when you could have them read a book or do something that grows their mind, right? That improves their life as opposed to just dumb entertainment. You know it. Have you ever see kids in front of TVs? They're like this, right? You can't, hello, 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 hello. They're not engaged with the world around them. That's bad enough. These people now are poisoning your kids with lies and perversion. Oh, Slater, they're celebrating inclusion. Yeah, always, right? Remember Drag Queen Story Hour? Right? All about inclusion. It never stops there. The slippery slope is real. Remember the most recent iteration of this? This guy came dressed as a rainbow monkey with a giant sex toy between his legs. And the local libraries, this is in England, the local libraries loved it. Oh, they thought it was great. Last time we shared this story, I didn't know that there were comments in the comment section, right? They post that. The libraries themselves posted those pictures and videos. So this is one of the comments. This is from the Exeter Library. They posted the picture. That was a shock when the monkey turned around. And then a bunch of laugh emojis. Oh, that's great. That was some shock, right? You know, the dildo. And then this is the other library, Red Bridge Libraries. I know, monkey's out of control. But when you got it, flaunt it, I suppose. Oh, it's all good fun, isn't it? Never forget who these people are. They're sick, twisted, demented people. You would never let your kids be around them, ever. Don't let your kids be around them by proxy. All right, let me give you another example. Move away from Gonzo. Because this isn't just kids, right? We live in a depraved culture all around. I want to play this TikTok video here. I don't know how old this woman is. 30s? I don't know. But she decided to record this herself and post it herself for some reason. Here.
So I went out on a Tinder date the other day. Starts good. Dinner's good. We even decided to go watch a movie at his house after. And a little sexy time happens. We're not against sexy time. We like sexy time. So sexy time usually makes you hungry. And we decide to get tacos. So I hop in the car and I look over at homeboy who's on his phone. I'm thinking he's going to pick a slow jam for us to go get our munch on. And no, he's got Tinder open and he's matching with chicks and responding to girls he's already matched with. I'm no expert, but I kind of think you should wait till a girl you've just hooked up with, 1, leaves your house, 2, leaves your car before you start scouting out your next conquest.
Okay. A couple problems here. First, be wary of girls who use the word sexy time, get our munch on, and homeboy. The first thing. What stands out here, though, in this video here is how someone like this woman can decide to force morals onto an already deeply immoral situation. You're having sex with a guy you just met. You just met him. You have sex with him right away. You have zero self-respect. and then you want him to respect you? You are deep. And this is all of your choosing. But this is all of your choices led you here. Many different choices, bad choices led you here. You are deep in an immoral situation. And then at the end of it, you want to lay down some rules? Come on, homeboy, have some decency. Have some respect for me, a woman you just deeply disrespected. I'm more than just a body, says the person who just let this male treat her as nothing but a body. Are you with me on the morals of these people, the lack of morals? So why do we follow them? And I know they control every cultural institution that exists, right? And they put out this filth. I'm aware of that. But you don't have to consume it. They put it out. You don't have to eat it. In fact, now you must actively not consume it. You must actively search for other things like this network that is the opposite of that. Because if you don't have a conviction against it, they will find a way for you to consume it. You with me on that? You have to have an outright rejection. You have to have a revulsion, a repulsion to it. As an adult, and to teach your kids to see how misguided they are and manipulative these people are. I'll give you one last example, then we'll get to our guests. So there was some, festival the other day, and DaBaby, some rapper, was kicked out of the festival because he got up on stage and said, if you didn't show up today with HIV, AIDS, and any of them deadly sexually transmitted diseases that'll make you die in 2-3 weeks, put your cell phone light up. Like, what ridiculous thing. So this guy's homophobic, right? So Elton John, other guys condemned him. He was fired, kicked out of the festival. Then he was replaced at the festival with Young Thug and G Herbo. Now, I'm not super familiar with these gentlemen's work. So I looked up G Herbo, looked up some lyrics to his most popular song. Can't play them here, obviously, but just know that he was arrested for beating up his baby mama. This was April of 2019. So pretty recently. And then December of 2020, he was arrested for spending millions of dollars from stolen identification. So that's G Herbo. Then Young Thug, real name Jeff Williams. By the way, G Herbo's real name is Herbert Wright III. So that's why I refer to rappers as their real names. That there's nothing that can destroy the mystique of a rapper more than calling them by their real name. Right? So Herbert stole millions of dollars in ID theft. Anyway, Jeff Williams, Young Thug, has been arrested, a bunch of drug weapons charges, intent to distribute meth, sued for not paying $2.2 million on a house, and donated all the proceeds of one of his concerts to Planned Parenthood. So good thing they got rid of the homophobic guy and replaced him with these two upstanding gentlemen. We wouldn't want to send the wrong message to our youth. So go ahead, take my advice, or give your kids over to transgender gonzo, listen to music from these criminals, and raise our men to treat women like objects and women to treat themselves like objects. Or grab your Bible and get to work. Coming up next, talk about the CDC and their extending of the rent moratorium, which is not a thing that you can do. Talk with the Congressman coming up next. Spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders, we are still fresh off of the presidency of the greatest tyrant this country's ever seen, subverting the Constitution. We have a constitutional crisis every single day with President Trump. Whew. Thank goodness that monster is gone. And we have someone who respects constitutional norms. Wow. All right, that being said, here's President Biden now talking about the CDC extending the eviction moratorium.
The bulk of the constitutional scholarship says that it's not likely to pass constitutional muster, number one. But there are several key scholars who think that it may, and it's worth the effort. Whether that option will pass constitutional measure with this administration, I can't tell you. I don't know. There are a few scholars who say it will, and others who say it's not likely to. But at a minimum, by the time it gets litigated, it will probably give some additional time while we're getting that $45 billion out to people who are, in fact, behind in the rent and don't have the money.
Wow, that's wild. Bob Barr is a former U.S. attorney and also former congressman in Georgia. Mr. Barr, how are you, sir?
Well, I'm doing good, although my stomach really starts to churn when I listen to President Biden with this kind of gobbledygook. I mean, it's not just nonsensical, it's frightening that the leader of our country has this cavalier view of the Constitution. I mean, that's really distressing.
Yeah, like we've surely had presidents in the past who did things that maybe they knew were unconstitutional or thought were unconstitutional or perhaps were unconstitutional. But I've never heard a president say it out loud and say, well, we're going to do it anyway.
I haven't either. I remember one time, for example, when I was in the House, Mike, and we were considering the campaign finance reform legislation, which I opposed and still oppose. But one of our leaders, no names mentioned, but he was very well known at the time, said, look, we know that the Supreme Court will likely deem this campaign finance reform legislation unconstitutional, but we're going to do it anyway. Well, as it eventually turned out, the Supreme Court didn't find it unconstitutional, and we were stuck with a very bad piece of legislation. But I have to tell you, Mike, and I've studied this issue of an eviction moratorium quite extensively, and there is no way that any legitimate constitutional scholar is going to find what this administration is trying to do constitutional. It's not even a close question.
Give me the best case you can for the other side, right? So if this goes to the Supreme Court, I'm tasking you. You're on Biden's side. You're on the government side. You have to make the case that this is constitutional. What could they possibly say?
Well, they'll probably dredge up a case from the Depression years, which we in law school studied as a case called Blaisdell. Now, granted, it had to do with state governments abrogating rent contracts and lease contracts and mortgage contracts during the Depression. And the court, even though there is very clear language in the Constitution that says a state government cannot abrogate contracts, the Supreme Court said, well, you can do it anyway because, one, we're in an emergency, that is the Depression, and secondly, that there is this thing called the police power that gives the government very broad, undefined, very vague authority to do whatever it wants if it says it is protecting the public. So, unfortunately, there is some case law that this administration could hang its hat on. And then, of course, we have Justice Brett Kavanaugh to thank for refusing to stop a lower court about a month and a half ago from continuing these evictions. There was a case that came to the Supreme Court, and a lower court judge had said the government does not have the authority to place a moratorium on evictions. Unfortunately, when that case went to the Supreme Court in late June, a 5-4 decision with Justice Kavanaugh siding with the liberals said, well, even though it's unconstitutional, even though there is no lawful authority, we'll let them do it because, after all, it's only for another month or so. Well, that month has come and gone. Congress hasn't done anything. And here we are with this administration doing the very same thing again, even though 5 members of the Supreme Court said it's unlawful.
That's brutal, the Kavanaugh story. Like, he would have to know better, that silly argument of there's only a month left. He would have to know that you're just setting more precedent for the future. No? How could he not have seen that?
Well, I don't know, but I suspect, and this is what worries me with Justice Kavanaugh, I think he was very much intimidated and remains intimidated as a result of the brutal grilling that he went through during his confirmation hearings a couple of years ago. And then later on, we had senators like Schumer and White House saying, you in the Supreme Court, you better watch out because we've got your number and we have the authority to limit your power and take action against you. And I think that, unfortunately, had an impact on Justice Kavanaugh. And that's why
maybe even to prove.
Pardon?
Yes, excuse me, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Congressman. I apologize. And maybe also to prove that he's not a bad guy. He's not a mean guy. So he'll do some nice things every once in a while.
That's the Justice Roberts approach that it's important for the image of the Supreme Court to show that we're really nice guys and that we want things to be nice in the country. It's not nice to violate the Constitution, however.
That's brutal. So let's look forward with this eviction moratorium. So it's 2 months. The CDC just did it. Under what authority? I have no idea. Maybe you do know what authority they have. I'd like to know that. But who thinks that it will only be 2 months, right? I mean, doesn't this just bring us closer to, I don't know, free rent? What's the next step on the slippery slope?
It's hard to tell, other than more of the same, for as long as this administration can keep going with this charade that there's really lurking somewhere some constitutional authority to simply say that landlords cannot enforce lawful contracts with lessees and renters. The basis on which the CDC issued this order last week is almost laughable, saying that, if you allow landlords to enforce their contracts and remove renters who aren't paying their rent, all of these renters are going to rush out and rush into homeless shelters and other congregate settings, and the pandemic is going to explode. I mean, there's no evidence for this at all. It's nonsensical. They are claiming that this is an emergency on top of an emergency with this Delta variant, although medical studies show, and the facts actually show, that yes, while it may be a more contagious version of COVID, it is far less lethal. And we have tools now that were not available a year ago when COVID was running rampant to keep it under control. There's no basis whatsoever for what this administration is doing, either on the facts or on the Constitution.
Congressman, great to talk to you, sir. Thanks for your insight.
Yes, sir.
Former Congressman Bob Barr. This is one of the most really concerning things of even the last year and a half to me, this bill. Because this is like transcending out of the COVID emergency into more normal life forever moving forward. Does that make sense? Like some things were like COVID related or COVID entirely related. This is like COVID tangential and will just proceed with us forever, where the government could just take your property from you without just compensation. That's what this is. And our president's like, well, whatever. Let's ask for forgiveness instead of permission. True story. Mike Slater. Spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders. The word equity is a Trojan horse. Watch out whenever it's used. And it creates a lot of real discrimination as a result. I want to go to our next guest. He's the author of a new book, An Inconvenient Minority: The Attack on Asian American Excellence and the Fight for Meritocracy. He's the president of Color Us United, Kenny Xu. Kenny, how are you, brother?
Hey, thanks for having me.
Really good to talk to you. So if someone listening now is not Asian, what does it matter? What does it matter? Maybe there are too many Asians at universities now, Kenny. So why does this attack on meritocracy affect all of us?
Because when you let the government discriminate against the people who are most excellent in whatever field, whether it's Asian Americans who tend to be most excellent academically, or certain subsets of Americans who tend to be most excellent in business or in media or in sports, you're basically letting the government impose a penalty upon you based on something you can't control about yourself. That is discrimination. That's why every race should be concerned about what's going on at Ivy League colleges who discriminate against Asian Americans, as I argue in my book, An Inconvenient Minority.
And these people who decide, what's their motive / what's their end goal if we let them? If we let them decide what the perfect makeup is of, let's say, universities, what do you think that would look like?
These people are true believers. They're true believers in critical race theory. Harvard admissions officers, Harvard created critical race theory. It stemmed from Harvard Law School. The admissions officers really believe in a system where they are so arrogant to say, we want to balance the races. We want a certain number of people of certain races into our school. They believe it is virtuous that they're allowing lower qualified Black Americans into Harvard over higher qualified Asian Americans, lower qualified white Americans even over higher qualified Asian Americans. As a result, an Asian American has to score 440 points higher on the SAT to have the same chance of admission as a Black person.
It's unbelievable. Why does the left, certain groups of subsets of the left perhaps, attack meritocracy? What's the problem with this idea of meritocracy, which every American used to think was an amazing, wonderful thing?
Most Americans still do. Most Americans still believe, hey, the lazy person should not be rewarded, right? The hardworking person should be rewarded. The person who is smarter or more skilled, whether that's genetically or whether that's because of hard work. By the way, it's mostly because of hard work. But the person who is most skilled should be rewarded. But the reason why the left is against meritocracy is because it points them to force themselves to think about things not from a way that they can blame systemic racism on. They can't blame white people or rich people for the failures when it comes to their own communities. You know, in New York City, they had a standardized test system. They gave out free test prep to all Americans, targeting low-income Black and Hispanic communities. But the problem was, even when they gave out this free test prep, a lot of the low-income Black and Hispanic kids in the city schools just did not do it, never completed those programs. And at that point, you have to ask the question, well, is it racist, or whose fault is that really?
Yeah, that where it gets into culture, and that's why the left does not want to touch this topic, which is what I believe it almost all comes down to. So I want to ask twofold, and we only got about a minute and a half, but what are some cultural aspects of certain Asian communities that lead them to better test scores, let's say? And then the other part of that is I see an intentional undermining of that by calling it, oh, well, the Asians are this model minority, as if like you shouldn't, or Asians shouldn't do these good things anymore. Or it's like a weird like intentional perversion or attack almost on Asians by calling them model minorities. What do you say of that?
Well, now the left is going after Asian success. They're trying to guilt Asian Americans into thinking that their hard work is seen as privilege. They're calling Asian Americans white adjacent, as if we're the minority that is most complicit in white supremacy because we committed the unpardonable sin of working hard. Asian Americans study twice as many hours as the average American. They have stronger two-parent family structures. They believe in hard work and practice, especially in the maths and sciences. And that should be rewarded, right? Not because Asian Americans are inherently superior or anything like that, but because this can fit every culture. Every culture can work hard. Every culture can preach success. That's what we should preach in this country, not victimization based on race.
30 seconds, but the attack that the left makes, the critical race theory people make is, hey, Black people, if you do these things, then you're acting white.
Yeah, they call them Uncle Toms now. There are now Black people in these schools that are actually being called Uncle Toms just because they want to study hard. This is cultural deprivation right there.
Kenny Xu, An Inconvenient Minority, the attack on Asian American excellence and the fight for meritocracy. Grateful for you, Kenny. Thank you, sir.
Absolutely, thank you.
And the president of Color Us United. You can follow them on Twitter and learn more about them there. Beautiful. All right, we may do this tomorrow or the next day. I want to do my full, complete, but succinct rundown on masks and why they don't work. I'll bring in the science, the doctors, the research and everything in just one quick little segment. We can do that. We'll try to do it tomorrow, but we'll certainly do it sometime this week. True story. Mike Slater. Spread the word.